Yeah, we are live.
Okay.
Maybe we should wait for some time for audience to join in.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Can start. So, hello everyone. First of all, are we guys audible to you all? Say yes if we guys are audible.
I think we are audible.
Okay. So, good evening everyone, and welcome to this exciting online guest session about Flutter development. I'm Sachin Dapkara, and I'm the coordinator of the app dev wing here at Axios Triple Lucknow. And here with us, we have Mr. Abhishek Doshi, who is a Google developer expert in Dart, Flutter, and Firebase. So today, we'll hope that we guys can learn something from his remarkable expertise in Dart, Flutter, and Firebase. Without further ado, I think I should hand over this virtual stage to Mr. Abhishek Doshi. So, Mr. Doshi, the floor is yours now.
Okay. So, hey everyone, I'm Abhishek, and today let's explore the world of Flutter. Let's see what is Flutter, why people are using Flutter, why is it trending recently, and how Flutter actually works. And we will also try out one sample code to run on multiple devices like Android, iOS, macOS, web, etc., so that we can understand how Flutter actually works. So, yeah. So I'm a Google developer expert for Dart, Flutter, and Firebase. I've been working in Flutter and Firebase since past I guess 5 years now, and that's pretty exciting to work with Flutter actually. So before we start, कैसे हैं आप लोग? I hope you're doing well and you're having a good Sunday, good weekend. So yeah, I think maybe it would get either boring for you to learn Flutter, or maybe you'll learn something new and try out Flutter now. So what exactly is Flutter? So Flutter is actually a cross-platform app development framework, or you can say UI framework developed by Google. It is completely open source. It means that the code for Flutter framework or the Flutter engine is completely open source. You can get that on directly on the GitHub, which is why Flutter is called completely open source. And whoever has worked with Flutter, they might have heard the statement that everything in Flutter is a widget. So how many of you have actually worked with Flutter, or maybe you have tried to run an application on Flutter? Maybe tried once in till now. Anyone who have already worked in Flutter or tried it out?
You guys can type in chat actually, online chat, YouTube. If you guys have worked with Flutter before, or even if you are beginner, you can write.
Okay, so we have one, maybe two who have worked with Flutter. Okay, that's nice. So yeah, everything in Flutter is a widget. Widget is something you can say if you are from web development background, or maybe you have learned React, a component in your web development. So a tag called center tag, or a title tag. All this in Flutter is a widget or a class, you can say. Flutter has a very large community support. This means that, let's suppose you are working in Flutter, and you are having some issues. Then you can just go on Twitter, post your issue, use hashtag Flutter, and anywhere around the world someone would help you out to solve that issue. Obviously it would take some time, like maybe 2 to 3 hours, but you will get your answer. So Flutter has a very large community support, and it's easy to use because everything is like related to class, OOP language, etc. So it becomes very easy to understand Flutter and work with it. Also, like if some of you have worked with native Android or native iOS, we have to for native Android we have two separate languages, right? We write the UI part in XML, and we write the logic part in either Java or Kotlin. But with Flutter, it is just one language, that is Dart. We write our UI as well as the logic part in Dart only. So that is also why it becomes easy to use and easy to understand. So moving forward, Flutter is a cross-platform framework. So whatever code you write, the same code you can run on mobile, web, desktop, and embedded. So basically, let's suppose you have written maybe a counter application where you have a button, and clicking on that button increases the counter value. So that particular code can run on Android, iOS, web, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Fuchsia OS, and embedded with Raspberry Pi, etc. So the benefit is that only one code base you have to maintain. So if your client or if your product needs the support for web as well as mobile devices, then you just have to create one code and you can run it on mobile devices as well as web apps. So this is one of the major benefit of any cross platform languages, that only one code base you have to maintain, and you can run it on multiple devices. तो सही है ना, मतलब काफी अच्छी चीज है ये. So, why people choose development with Flutter? So, first of all, it is fast. Why fast? Because whenever you write your code in Flutter, Flutter framework converts that code to native language and then execute on the device. So it becomes very fast. It gives exactly like whatever whatever way you are running your application in native, it gives the same experience. It is beautiful because it uses Google's Material UI as well as Apple's Cupertino UI. So you can have like custom widgets as well, custom UI. You can use the pre-existing the components like dialog, bottom sheet, etc. And it is productive because only one code base you need to maintain. You don't have to maintain like a separate code base for Android, iOS, web, etc. You can just use the same code base, and whenever you need to update something, there is just one code base to update. So that is also one of the major advantage why people are using Flutter. And of course it is open source. So let's suppose even if you found an issue in the Flutter framework, then you can just go on the Flutter GitHub repository, file an issue, or if you have a solution, create a PR, so that even you can contribute to the Flutter framework. So we learned what is Flutter, why Flutter. Then, if you want to start learning Flutter, if you want to start creating apps in Flutter, what is the prerequisite for Flutter? So, first is OOP language. Well, OOP language is really important because Dart is an OOP language also. So, whatever OOP concepts, OOPS concepts we have, inheritance, polymorphism, classes, objects, final keywords, uh, etc., interfaces, all of them would be used in Dart also. So at least you should be aware of one OOPS language, maybe Java or C++, whichever you prefer. But at least you should be aware of one OOPS language so that you are aware or you are experienced with the OOPS concepts. Second is Dart, because Dart is the backbone of Flutter. Flutter is a framework, and you write the code in Dart. Same way, like for example, if we take the example of React, React is a framework. You write the code in JavaScript. Same way in Flutter, we write the code in Dart. So initially, you should try to learn Dart. It's okay, like if you don't become expert in it or you don't become like very good in it, but you should have a bit of experience in Dart so that you understand how you can write your logic components, how you can write a UI components, etc. Then your machine should have Git installation, because as I mentioned, Flutter is completely open source. So whenever you try to install your Flutter SDK, at that time also it fetches the GitHub repository and clones it into your system. So Git installation is very important. Then obviously the Flutter and Dart SDK. So whenever you install Flutter SDK, Dart SDK would automatically be installed along with the Flutter SDK. And the last would be your preferred IDE. So IDE is where you will be writing your code. We have VS Code, IntelliJ, Android Studio. So all of this IDEs support working with Flutter. If you don't want to use an IDE, like if your system is not that good, like maybe you just have like 2 or 3 GB of RAM, then you can skip the IDE part. You can use the online IDEs like Datpad.dev. Then we have another very good options, like recently Google announced Project IDX, which is idx.dev. So you can use that also, where you can create your applications with Flutter. So we saw what are the prerequisites of Flutter, how Flutter works, but now we will see how Flutter app actually works. So on the top you can see we have that your code section. This is where you write your Dart code. Flutter framework takes that Dart code, provides it to the C++ Flutter engine. The name of the C++ Flutter engine is Kia. Skia. Recently, Flutter team also released a new version, a new rendering engine called Impeller. So Impeller was just released because like there was with Skia there was a jank issue in iOS. So Flutter team created a new rendering engine especially for iOS. Like it is available in stable for iOS and they're still in development for Android. So basically, you write your code in Dart. Flutter framework takes that code, gives it to the C++ Flutter engine called Skia. Skia engine converts your Dart code to iOS or Android runner. So as I mentioned earlier, Flutter framework converts your code to native language. So let's suppose you are running your application on Android. Then the C++ Flutter engine will convert your Dart code to either Java or Kotlin, and then it will run it on your Android device. Same way, if you are running on iOS, it will convert into Swift and then run it on your hardware. So this is the main reason why Flutter can provide native like uh, performance or native like look. So yeah, basically it converts your Flutter code or Dart code to native code. That's why. So what are the current trends actually? So it is fastest growing skill stated by LinkedIn. This trends are actually of 2022. 2023 trends are still not released by LinkedIn. So in 2022, it was the fastest growing skill stated by LinkedIn. It was one of the 15 GitHub repos, and it is used by great companies around the world. So yeah, you can see like if you go to GitHub also, it is one of the top 15 GitHub repos, and it is used by great companies around the world. Like if you have used Google Pay, like almost everyone have used. So Google Pay is created with Flutter. If you have used the app of Canara Bank, which is AI Canara or something like that, so that is also created with Flutter. Then Cred is created with Flutter. The game BGMI, most of you have played. So in that, the community chat feature, only that particular feature is created with Flutter, not the entire application. Just that feature is created with Flutter. So this is also a possibility. Like if you have created your application or a game using Unity, you can integrate Flutter component inside Unity. Then you can also, like if you have created a website using React, you can inject a Flutter component inside React as well. So that is also possible. So like you can connect Flutter to native components. Like if you have created an Android application and want a Flutter component, you can do that as well. For example, there is a company in Dubai called Talabat. They are like a food delivery application. If you know Delivery Hero, so Talabat is a child company of Delivery Hero. So they are like a food application where in Dubai and actually UAE, and they have their entire application in native, and they are migrating it to Flutter. So right now, as at this point, like they are in the migrating phase. So few of the components in their application is in Flutter and few are in the native language. So you can do that as well. And these are few of the helpful resources. The documentation of Flutter is really good. You can just check out flutter.dev/docs. If you are bored of reading documentations, you can check out their YouTube channel, that is flutter.dev/youtube. If you're already working in Flutter, there is one specific playlist called package of the week. So in the package of the week, they show you a different package every week, so that you can understand how this package works, how you can integrate it with your application, etc. If you're a complete beginner of, or if you want to start, I have written a rough roadmap. This is my opinionated roadmap. It can be different for different people, but this is a rough roadmap on how you can start working in Flutter. And I regularly post articles, so you can check them out as well. And now let's actually start work on a Flutter application. Like let's create a Flutter application and try to run it so that you can see. So if I'm using VS Code, you can just create a new Flutter application by Command Shift P, um, and Flutter application. Select a folder, then give it a name. Let's just give it Flutter application 1. So it will create the Flutter application, the basic Flutter application that we have. This is actually a counter application. So it is like, it just creates the basic code, all the files, required files, etc. So all the Android related code is present in the Android folder. So if someone is from Android background, you can see we have the Java folder, the Kotlin folder where main activity is available, etc. All the iOS related files are present in the iOS folder. All the Dart related file, Flutter related files are present in the lib folder, and the entry point is obviously main.dart. Then we have Linux folder where all the Linux related files are present, Mac OS, web, Windows, and all the test related file. Like if you want to write widget test, unit test, integration test, etc., then you can write it inside the test folder. So this is how the folder structure looks like. We have one very important file called pubspec.yaml file. So whatever packages you want to add, or whatever libraries you want to integrate with your Flutter application, you can add that particular packages inside the dependencies part. Here inside the dependencies, you can add any package that you want. All the packages are available on pub.dev. It is a website where you can, even if you create your own package, you can host it on pub.dev, or you can find multiple packages. So you can see like Cupertino icons is a package that is by default provided by Flutter team for all the Cupertino related icons, like iOS related icons. Then Flutter SDK is available. Inside dev dependencies, you have the Flutter test, etc. So basically, you can add all the dependencies over here. This, you can say that this is our configuration file where you will write your dependency or package related configurations. Now let's go through the code. As I mentioned earlier, in Flutter, everything is a widget. So there are two types of widget: stateless widget and a stateful widget. So stateless widget, as the name suggests, it doesn't have a state. State means it doesn't change the value of that particular application or of that particular widget in the life cycle. So let's suppose that you have an app bar, and that is going to be constant. Like whatever user does, the app bar is not going to change. no matter what. So that is a stateless widget. But on the other case, let's suppose that you have a text, and on click of a button, the text changes. So that is a stateful widget. It has a state, it has a value that changes by user interaction, or that changes during the life cycle of a widget. So that is called a stateful widget. Now, because the stateful widget has a state and it changes during the life cycle, we have different life cycle methods. First is create state. So create state actually creates the state, as the name suggests, creates the mutable state for this widget at a given location in the tree. Then we have init state. So init state is basically it initializes the state. You can initialize the variables here. Maybe if you have any objects of a class, you can initialize it here, etc. Next, we have did chain dependencies. So, did chain dependencies is something like whenever you add a package or whenever you update a package, did chain dependencies is called. It is always called first time when init state is called, and every time when the packages change. So, you can see if I hover over it, it says that called when a dependency of the state or object changes. So, let's suppose you are using a package inside this particular class, and if that package doesn't change, then did chain dependencies is called. Then we have did update widget, did update widget, yeah. So did update widget says that if the parent widget, that is my home page, right, it extends the state of my home page. So if my home page changes, and if my home page triggers that the child should also change, then did update widget is called. So if we hover over it, call whenever the widget configuration changes. So if the parent widget rebuilds and requests that this location in the tree update to display a new widget with the same key, the framework will update the widget property of the state. So in layman terms, you can say that if my homepage changes, and if my homepage says that it's all the child widget should also change, then the update widget is called. Then we have another method called set state. Before set state, we have a build method. So all the UI related things are present in the build method. If you want to add a button, maybe a column, text, whatever you want to add, everything should be inside the build method. And there is this widget called set state. This method called set state. So set state is actually happening. Okay. So set state is like it triggers the build method, or it 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 tells the build method to again rebuild, or again call it. So it calls the build method once again so that your UI can update. Then we have, these are all the widgets. So you can see scaffold, app bar, then center, column. All of this are actually widgets. Text widget, etc. Floating action button. So all of these are actually a widget, or you can say a class which depicts a UI component. So if we say scaffold is actually one of main widget, you would be using scaffold a lot. So scaffold is, you can say that it is a canvas on which you will be painting your UI components. So it's like, if you are a painter, and so for you scaffold would be the canvas, and on that you will be doing your painting. So that's how you can explain scaffold. App bar is if you have open WhatsApp, and on the top we have that bar where we have like status, and then menu icon, etc. So that is actually the app bar. Center widget is like just center, just to make the widget inside the child, as the child is in center. Then we have column. Column is like, uh, if you want to align your children in a vertical manner, then you can use column. If you want to align your children or widgets in a horizontal manner, you can use row. Then we have text widgets, which is responsible for showing a text. Floating action button is like, if you open WhatsApp, especially for Android part, there is that button to start a new chat on the bottom right. So that is actually a floating action button. Okay, so someone has asked, like, I haven't understood why Flutter. So Flutter is actually a framework, or you can say a bundle, or a programming language in like layman terms. It's not actually a programming language, but in small words, you can say it is a programming language with which you can create applications. So as you see, this is a code, right? This is just a single code, and this same code you can run on Android, iOS, web, Mac OS, Windows, Linux, embedded, etc. So you don't have to do anything if you want to run the same code on different devices. So you can run the same code on your Android device, on your iOS device, Mac OS, etc. We will do that. Like, let me quickly do that. So we have right now, like, I am on Mac, so Mac OS, Chrome. These four are the emulators, Android emulators, and iOS. So let me first run the application on Android emulator. Okay. So this is my Android emulator, and this is the code. I have not done any changes till now. It's the by default code when you create your Flutter application. So let me run it. You can run the code in debug mode by F5, function key 5, which triggers the debug mode. Debug mode is actually like if you want to add like a debug point, so that whenever you are running this application, it will stop over here, so that you can check what is the value of inverse, primary, color scheme, etc. So normally when you run your application for the first time, like you have just installed the Flutter SDK and you are running your application for the first time, then it will take some time because it downloads few of the files. So you can see this is the application. It is like a counter application. When you click on it, the button, this is the floating action button. This is the app bar, the top app bar. Yeah. This is the app bar, and this is the text in a column. So now we have few features called hot reload and hot restart. So hot restart restarts your application. Hot reload just rebuilds your particular screen. So let's suppose that I want to change the color of this app bar. So I can do like colors dot maybe amber and hot reload it. You can do hot reload by Control S. So you can see that it quickly changed the color of the app bar. It didn't even take like, I think it just took 80 milliseconds. You can see 80 ms reload time. So it is very very fast to, if you are just making small changes in your UI, it is very fast to check that UI and again do it. So you can see it again changed back. So this is very fast. You can even change, like, I want to change the title to add 1 2 3. So I just added it and it just reflected when I saved the file. So Flutter is very fast. And so this is the and I ran this application on the Android emulator, or maybe you can say an Android device. Now let me quickly run it on an iOS device. So this is my iOS device, and I have not done any changes in the code. It's same whatever we ran on Android. I'm going to try to run the same code on iOS as well without doing any changes. So normally iOS takes a bit of time because of all the dependencies it downloads for the iOS part and everything. There is a build happening underneath Flutter. That build is happening from the iOS native part. So all those things are done. So iOS takes a bit more time compared to Android to run. But yeah, it's worth waiting. So till that time, if anyone has any questions, you can drop it in the YouTube chat, because this will take, I guess, 2 to 3 minutes.
You can like drop it in online YouTube chat, or maybe you can also ask it in Slido link that has been provided to you. I can again post it here.
Yeah, so you can see it's running now. So I didn't do any changes. It's the same code running on iOS as well now, with the same functionality. There is no changes done in the code. It's still the same. Now let's run it on which device do we have next? Let's try to create a web app. So let me run it as a web application or a website, you can say. and then you can host it on whichever domain you want, but this would be just running on your local host. Yeah, so you can say this is now running on Chrome as well without any code change. Like I didn't do even a single line of change, and it's running on, you know, this Chrome as well. And now let's also try out to run on Mac OS, which is a desktop. So we have ran the code on Android, we ran the code on iOS, we ran the code on Chrome. So three platforms we have already ran our code. Now this is the fourth one, Mac OS. Like I am on Mac OS, so I got the option of Mac. If you are on Windows, you will get an option to run on Mac, run on Windows. So you can see this is a Mac application, same way as your normal application, like other Mac applications. Like you can let me, yeah. So you can see this is the Flutter application one, which is our project name. So this is our Mac application. You can hide it, you can keep in dock, open it, login, show in Finder. Everything is same as a normal application. So I can increase the counter variable, minimize it, make it full screen, so it still remains the same like a normal Mac application. You won't even feel that this is a Flutter application, this is created with Flutter. So yeah, I guess this is why people are using Flutter, so that they can try it out on, they can work, they can create the code one time and run it on multiple platforms, deploy it whenever required, etc. So I think that's it from my end. Like I gave an overview of how Flutter works, which platforms you can run your code with Flutter, and where you can find resources for Flutter, what are packages, etc. So like if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat or Slido.
Whatever doubts you have till now, maybe you can drop it in chat or slide as well. Okay, so Aman Vishwakarma is asking a question. Sir, if I join Flutter, what advantages would I have over others?
Okay, so let's suppose that if you are coming from a web development background, if you know already JavaScript, you're good with JavaScript, I would suggest that you should go to React, because React uses JavaScript. So you will be more comfortable, more good with React. If you are coming from a class-based language like C++, Java, etc., then you can work with Flutter. Like if you are coming from web development, then also you can work, but it will take a bit of time to understand all the class related things, etc. And what advantages would you have? Slowly, startups and big companies are adopting Flutter a lot. It is still slow, like as I mentioned, in India, even TCS, Infosys, all these companies are using Flutter, not actively, but they have few projects which they are creating in Flutter. Google is using Flutter, BMW, Toyota, they are also using Flutter. So worldwide, there are lots and lots of opportunities of Flutter. Because the main reason is this only, that let's suppose you are a company owner, and you are getting clients who want Android and iOS application both. Then instead of having two different teams of Android and iOS, you can just have one team of Flutter developers who can create both the application, right? So that is what the main advantages is for a company as well.
Okay. So the Quaker is asking, isn't it too early to start app dev now? I guess he's
So,
in his first
mhm.
semester.
Okay. So I would suggest that if you know at least one object-oriented language, maybe C++, Java, or whichever object-oriented language you know, if you know at least one, you can start with app development. And I have seen developers who have started from first semester, first year, etc. They are very good now, because you will get enough time to explore Flutter, and then when you graduate, you can work in Flutter. And right now, like if you're in first semester or first year, even if you're in second year, you still have time to explore different things, right? So you can explore Flutter, you can explore native app development, you can explore Compose, Kotlin, then you can explore React Native, etc. Then you can stick to which app development framework or app development software development you want to work on.
We have another question coming up. So, can I use some physical device in place of the Android SDK? I think he or she meant emulator.
Yeah. So yeah, you can definitely use a physical device. So basically, like I used the emulator so that it can quickly show me the details. But you can use a physical device. How to connect a physical device? So in your device settings, you need to enable the USB debugging and then just connect your application with Flutter. Then just connect your device with your laptop, and you will be able to run your application with Flutter.
Okay. So we have another question. Flutter versus Kotlin considering future prospect. I know both Java and CPP.
Okay, so Kotlin recently released their multi-platform version, KMN or something like that. So both have their own use cases. Kotlin creating UI components are a bit difficult compared to Flutter. Like as you saw that even the base code that the Flutter team has provided, the simple counter application that is also looking very good, right? Uh, so creating beautiful UIs in Flutter is very simple compared to Kotlin. In Kotlin, also I think you have to write your code in XML again. So that's also like a headache. Like you have to first learn XML as well, and then for logic part you have to write in Kotlin and then connect both. But on the other hand, as I showed you, like the so if you see the logic part, that is incrementing the counter, is actually inside the Dart only, and the UI part is also inside Dart, right? So that's how it works. Like you can write both the code UI and logic in the same Dart file, and then you can work on, you can connect both the UI and logic part.
Okay. Aniket Cole has asked, are apps made using Flutter like Kotlin and Swift faster than Flutter?
So in Kotlin, what things is, if you are just creating a single screen application, then Kotlin would be faster. If you have like multiple screens and you have to even pass data between those screens, manage the states, etc., then Flutter would be faster. So this is how it works. Like the as the screen number of screen increases, you will see that Flutter is much better compared to any native platform. And actually, whatever application you create in Flutter, the main reason people are using Flutter is because of its cross platform functionality. Like you can just create a single application and run it on Android and iOS.
That was good. So Kuldeep Jhala has asked, what is the scope of app dev in India versus outside India?
Right. So in India also, we have very good app. See, app development is always going to stay. Let's suppose AI ML is coming up, and AI ML openings for AI ML is a lot, right? But if you are creating a machine learning model, and if you want to show that to your users, the result to your users, you won't show them the terminal, right? You have to either create a website for it or an application for it. So app development and web development is like evergreen fields. They won't ever get burned out, or they won't ever stop the requirements. So in India, app development is at peak. Like you will get lots of app development. I'm talking about app development in general, not Flutter. So app development openings a lot. For Flutter mainly, we have many places where they are requesting for Flutter, like cities like Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, or Delhi. These major cities, they are hiring for Flutter people as well. I don't know if you heard of an application called Scapia. So Scapia is a product where it's like a credit card application. So that entire application is made in Flutter. So even like not just entertainment related applications are made in Flutter, even healthcare or finance, all these people are also using Flutter now.
Great. Tanish has asked, how do we design the app logo and the UI part?
Okay, so app logo is actually designed if you're talking about the design part, then it will always be done in Figma and everything, all the design tools. But if you want to implement that particular design in your application, so for the app logo, we have a package called Flutter launcher icons, which will run. You just have to provide the settings, like you have to configure that package and provide the image path, and it will create your app logo. If you don't want to use that package, you can do it natively as well, the way we change the icons for Android, native Android and native iOS. You can do it that way also. Now regarding the UI part, again, if you want to design it, then you have to design it in Figma, Adobe, etc. But if you want to implement a design, then as I mentioned, like we have scaffold. Scaffold is the canvas, you can say, and inside that scaffold, inside the body of that scaffold, you can have multiple widgets. So let's suppose you want to add an image, we have image.asset. Let's suppose you want to have an image from a URL, then we have image.network, etc. So that's how you can add an image, or maybe a container. We have a container widget. If you want to give a rounded border to an image, then you can do it with clip or rect. So we can do it like that.
Yep. So now I do have some another question from Slido as well. One question is
Okay.
that from the beginner's perspective, what should he or she do, native or cross-platform, basically?
So I would suggest, if you have time, like if you are in college, first year, second year, explore native, because all the frameworks ultimately converts things into native. You will, at a point, you will have to try out native. Maybe something you want to directly communicate with your hardware device, then you will have to even write native code in Flutter application. So you should explore, or you should understand native uh, development, so that it is not a barrier in your career. It is not like that if you don't learn native, you won't be able to learn Flutter. It's not like that. But I'll suggest that you can explore, or you should explore native first, and then come to a cross platform world.
Okay, great. Another question is that when it comes to cross-platform, what should one explore? Uh, React Native or Flutter? Because both
So
are
as I yeah
contexts. Yeah.
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, like if you are from a web development background, you have not even touched a class-based language from a long time, then you should definitely go with React Native, because you are already experienced with JavaScript and all the web development components, right? So, and React Native also uses JavaScript. So I would suggest that if you are from a web development background, you should go with React Native. If you are from a class-based language, like you have been working with Java or native C++ or native Android iOS development, then you should go with Flutter.
Great. So I have another question from Slido about what is the like future of Flutter, where it will go. I mean,
Okay. So the future of Flutter is, it's still growing, because Flutter is open source. Like, let's suppose that Google in future says that we are not going to maintain Flutter. We are not now supporting Flutter. It can happen, right? But the thing is, because Flutter is open source, people like us, people who are working in Flutter, they can maintain Flutter repository, the Flutter SDK. They right now also, if you go to Flutter repository, you will see that 10% are only Googlers. The rest 90% who are contributing, they are from community only, like people like us who are trying to improve the Flutter. So a Flutter requirement of Flutter developers can decrease, because it's a framework. Like all technology has a period. Like as you know, like earlier we had Xamarin, Ionic, Cordova. Now we don't see that in market, because that particular framework still exists, but the requirement is changed. So you, as a software developer also, you should always adapt to what is required in the market. But as I mentioned, like Flutter development won't, the Flutter SDK or the Flutter as a product won't be removed.
yeah. So Aman has asked, as a beginner, how should I start with Flutter?
So like as I mentioned, if you should first understand the OOP concepts. no matter whichever language you come from, if you know OOP concepts either from Java, C++, etc., you're good to start. And if you directly come to Flutter, then start with UI development. Let's suppose you can just like clone a particular application's UI. Like we normally use WhatsApp, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, right? So you can clone that particular UI using Flutter. We have all the components with which it is possible to clone the UI. Like you can code the entire UI of Instagram in your Flutter application. So once you know how things are working in Flutter, how you can create a UI, then you can go with backend services like Firebase, AppWrite, AWS, Cloud, etc. You can integrate APIs with your application so that you can get dynamic data. Then you can work on state management. State management is like if you want to pass data from first page to 10th page, then how you can pass it, like either you can pass it from first to second, second to third, third to fourth, like that, or you can directly pass it using state management. State management option is much better one. So you can learn that also. Like we have many state management techniques, so you can explore them. And then maybe architecture, writing test cases, etc. But as a beginner, you should always start with the UI components.
Okay, agreed. Uh, do we have any more questions? Like you may ask it here or in Slido as well. Okay, so Aman is saying that I know Python completely and I will learn other also with time. So
Yeah,
will
I
it
guess
help?
Yeah, I guess Python doesn't follow lots of OOP concepts. So I would suggest either Java or C++ would be a better option if you want to start with Flutter.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess if anyone doesn't have any questions, and if in future you face any issues, like if you start learning Flutter and if you face any issues, you can connect me on either of the social media handles, and I might reply there. Like maybe it will take some time, like few hours, but I'll definitely try to reply.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we don't have any more questions. So maybe we can end it here. Thank you, Abhishek, Mr. Abhishek Doshi, sir, for joining with us and sharing your expertise in the Flutter development. Like I'm sure that the audience here must have learned something from today's session. And if someone is beginner, then uh, he must have got some help to begin his Flutter development journey. So yeah, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so much,
joining.
everyone, for joining.